Hi and welcome to Positively Sparking, podcasts on internet marketing, online business, entrepreneurship and digital living. Today I'm with Phil Hopkins, a serial entrepreneur from the fine city of Leeds. I've known Phil a long time and can honestly say he's the greatest networker I've ever met. Phil believes that business is all about people. And today we're going to learn some of his secrets for meeting and developing new relationships with new people and nurturing those into new opportunities. So hi Phil, how are you?
I'm very well, Phil. How are you? It's like the Phil and Phil show here, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
And I've just got back from the Philippines, so Phil and Phil from the Philippines.
We'll have to be careful with all those Phils.
Absolutely. I'm filling up.
So Phil, I've been really looking forward to this chat because I've known you quite a long time, and obviously we'll introduce you in a second because people listening won't know you like I do. Indeed. But one of my memories of you is shortly after we started working together at H2, we went to a networking event at the Royal Armouries. Really beautiful event. Yes. It's all about sushi, I believe.
Yep. I remember that, yes, indeed, Craig.
And this is the first time I've been with you to a networking event. So we went up in the lift, we stepped outside, and I kind of, spoke to 6 or 7 people maybe and ate quite a bit of sushi. And on the way down, when we were leaving in the same lift, you had about 50 cards in your hand. I've been watching you all night. You were with a different person every time I looked. You had notes on the back of them all written in shorthand.
That's right.
And I just thought, this guy is special. I've never seen anything like this before. So today we're going to chat all about networking.
About networking, yeah.
I think you're going to have some great tips to give. So Phil, tell us who you are, what you do now, and what you've done previously.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the ultimate networking career, if you like, is journalism, and that's where I started. I ended up in probably from 1979 to 86. Let's get my age out of the way. I'm 55 now. And my early life was on newspapers, which was the Yorkshire Evening Post as a trainee, before, of course, moving into radio and television. And these days, the extension of that was PR, marketing, and one thing and another. I'll touch on some of that as we go through the interview. But I think the fundamental thing is that journalism teaches you is that you spend your life initially talking to strangers, and you have to go in as part of your job and ask questions. And I always remember Malcolm Barker, bless him, who died not long since, who was my editor at the time, and he once said to me, and I think I took this as a compliment, whether it was meant as a compliment is debatable. He says, "You are the nosiest man I've ever met." And I figured that a journalist saying that to a trainee was a great compliment, because I'm the nosiest man, and I just love knowing about people, who they are, where they're from, what they've done, what their hobbies are. And people are like onions, and you've got to peel back the layers. But you know what? It takes time and it takes curiosity. And until you get to know the person, you can't sell to them. And so ultimately, journalism taught me to be naturally, it played to a natural desire to be inquisitive. So it was going to interview lottery winners, council leaders, magistrates' courts, barristers, lawyers, industrialists, any number of things. You'd go in on any morning, you did not know what you were going to be doing that day, because news, by its very definition, is self-defining on the day. And so that career of journalism, that was the initial part of me, which ultimately led on to PR, marketing, graphic design, websites, as I, if you like, jumped ship and went into the parallel world of PR and marketing.
I think that is a great compliment, Phil. That very much describes the Phil I know as well. You're interested in people.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Phil, what's one of your earliest memories of networking?
Well, I've got to tell you this, because you were good enough to just give me an indication of some of the things you were going to ask me. Well, I always have to laugh, and it's Gordon Kellett Entertainment's Leeds 0113 702 301. His phone number is imprinted on my mind, and I think Gordon is still running his theatrical agency. And I always remember, before I went into journalism, I wanted to be an actor, and I went down to London and I got various places. I couldn't go because Dad was in retail sales, Mum didn't work, and basically it cost an arm and a leg, and there wasn't the money to send me. Certainly to one of the paid-for drama schools, which were outside of the mandatory grant award at that time, and they cost thousands a year. But what I did learn was that to make it your own way, you had to have an equity card. To get anywhere, you had to have an equity card. To get an equity card, you had to have contracts. And I always remember, I thought, water does find a way of rolling down the hill. You've just got to find it. And I always thought to myself, what I did, I went to the editor of the Yorkshire Evening Post and I said, I want my own column. And I desperately wanted amateur theatre. I do theatre critic work now. He said, I can't do that for you, but he said, I will give you one called On the Working Men's Clubs. So Club Scene was born, which I wrote for 7 years. I made it my business to network all the theatrical agents because I knew that they issued contracts. And those contracts allowed you to get an equity card. So I always remember going to Gordon, bless him. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling this, in about 1980. And I said, you know what, we can do something here. You need this, I need that. And he got me a job playing Squicker the Fox for British Rail, which was a British Rail campaign. And I was booked as a huge, hairy fox in a big costume for the reopening of Saltaire railway station. Apart from the fact that I got my first contract, it threw the entire news desk into complete disarray because as I was on the platform, the train pulled up. This was before the mayor had arrived, and I noticed by coincidence that the assistant news editor was on the train directly in front of me. I lifted my fox head mask up, waved at him. He was in complete and utter shock that he'd clocked who I was. And then he somehow had gone back to the news desk and said, Phil Hopkins is at Saltaire Station. He must be covering the story. What they didn't realise, I was on day off, and I think the clue might have been that I was in a big fox outfit. And they never sent a journalist and a reporter, and they missed the whole event, which was one of the biggest British Rail openings. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in mass panic, sent a photographer and a reporter up to cover the event. So, and I went on with Gordon, and I got some gigs, and I got all my contracts, and I got my equity card. So that's one of the first times where I realised you've got to make it happen, and it won't come to you. But I got my equity card in at a time when everybody used to say it's just impossible to get an equity card unless you get a job as an assistant stage manager at a theatre, which was one of the few routes to do it. But I got it through working men's club contacts.
Wow, you made it happen.
I made it happen. Yeah, made it happen. Absolutely.
So, Phil, not everyone that I've met would dress up as a fox on a railway station platform and make something happen in that kind of manner.
Or as a dancing cardinal in The Meaning of Life.
Well, there we go.
That was a Monty Python film, for those who don't know.
So, given that not everyone is, quite as brave and as flamboyant as yourself, why do you believe many people are nervous of networking? We've all been to an event and we see someone there, don't we? We know it's the first time.
Because a lot of it is about people looking, they see this as a very personal thing and a reflection on them. Why is anybody, why are people some people are very, very angry in life? They're very angry in life because they are covering up for themselves. If they shout loudest, you won't actually get behind the veneer and look at them. And I think networking is like that because you're laying yourself on the line. You're not in a character, or at least you don't think you are. I actually probably would argue that I do go into a slightly different character. And it's because people have got to address their personal issues, often of self-worth. I can't do this, it's nerves, what will they say? I can't ask for a contract like that. And so I think it's a very personal thing. And I think people are nervous because naturally I adore and I'm quite comfortable going into a room of strangers in the same way that I'm quite happy travelling across the world by myself. Just been to the Philippines for 3 weeks, went on my own. And I think that gives you an inner strength. and puts you into very, very hostile situations all the time. So you become adept at it. So you've got to keep moving out of your comfort zone. Now, that doesn't mean going to the Philippines. It means making a contract with yourself and saying, I'm going to walk up to at least 4 people in this room that I do not know and introduce myself. So you overcome your nerves by doing something gradually that you've never done before until you get better at it.
Great tip there, Phil. And one thing I always believe when I think of you is that you found your style of networking and it plays on your gifts. So how did you develop your own networking skills? Was that something that came naturally, or did you consciously think, well, this is the kind of thing I'm more comfortable doing? I always remember you wearing a multi-tone suit at one event we went to.
Yeah, just to get a reaction, probably.
That's right, yeah.
And I think the thing is, I've always been involved in theatre over my life, so I think I've got a bit of a theatrical tendencies, perhaps. And I think what it is, you find your own style. You've got to find what works for you. And what I learned is, I'll tell you one little tip that I decided to do. And I used to play around with ideas, and this worked brilliantly. And remember, sitting on a table, which was probably the shape of an old sixpence, like a hexagonal. And the room was full of these tables, and there'd probably be 7 or 8 people. And you see everybody intensely selling. And I used to think, do you know what? They really missed the point here. Because there's 2 things you do in a networking event. You buy and you sell. But everybody goes to sell. And the worst networking groups are those which is a room full of salespeople, because everybody's selling. And the second everyone's selling, no one's buying, because it fails. Because the result is that people go away and say it was a bad event, and actually they are part of the problem. So that's why you need a room of decision makers, because a salesperson often doesn't have the power to buy. So I remember, and I said to them, can I go last on this table? And I was going to try a completely radical approach. So what I did, I could see people, after they'd finished their 60 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, whatever it was, they went to sleep. So I got to me and I said, my name's Phil Hopkins, and for the next 3 minutes I'm going to tell you all the things I buy from the companies around this table. And the whole table visibly moved forward. And I said, and whilst I tell you that, I'm going to tell you what I need from you. And I remember looking over and said, well, actually, I don't deal in water filtration products, so I'd be unlikely to buy anything from my company, from your company. However, I do work with a company that's in pipe repairs and has the Yorkshire Water contract, so I could probably introduce you there. Law firm, the last time I booked a law firm, I used Blacks. It was involved with this, that and the other. I've done 2 legal leases, 2 property leases, and I've done 1 purchase of a property. So my spend with an accountant in the last 12 months has been about £6,000. I would want you to, as a minimum, match the prices of the people who I worked with. Now, who does your social media? Who does your brochures? And who does your website? Because I would want that introduction with you. And by going round, I could see everybody waiting for me to get to them to see what I was going to buy from them. And that completely changed that table. Now that was a technique that was saying, so I was trying things. Then I go into toilets and I write, and I'll tell you what I love and what I hate. I hate cards with laminates which have got a laminated lacquer on, because you can't write on the back of them. So what I used to do is I used to destroy business cards by peeling the back off, a bit like a beer mat, because it's the only way you can write. So here's a tip for you. Don't laminate your cards. They give durability. They might look wonderful, but they're crap for writing on, so no one can make notes about you. Little things like that. So what I'm saying is you develop your technique and you find something that works for you.
So you've already given some really good tips there for people attending a networking event and not having laminated business cards.
Yes.
And the one thing that